Hello there and welcome to the Card Grotto. Today I'm creating some ombre inked backgrounds with just one colour of alcohol ink. In the past I have shared how to create an ombre inked background using 3 shades of alcohol ink. So I had red at the bottom, orange in the middle and yellow at the top. But I wanted to see if I could get more of a true ombre with just the one shade of alcohol ink and sort of lighten it as the ink goes up the panel. So I'm going to have it lighter at the top and darker at the bottom. So I have a piece of Yupo paper here and I have the watermelon alcohol ink from Holtz, and I'm just adding that directly from the bottle onto the Yupo paper, and I'm using the distress marker spritzing tool here just to sort of move that around. If you have the marker inside it, it kind of spritzes it out sort of like an airbrush. But if you use it without anything in it, it just like pushes out air, and that's quite good to sort of move the alcohol ink around. So I've added that darker shade at the bottom, and now I'm going to create a lighter shade in the middle. So what I've done is added some of that watermelon ink into a little pot here, and I've added some alcohol ink blending solution to it, and that's created a lighter shade of the same ink, but obviously a lighter shade. And so that's going to start creating my ombre for me. And I've done that sort of in the middle there. I've added that ink in, and now I've added even more of that alcohol ink blending solution to it. And that's going to give me an even lighter colour, which I'm going to add at the top. Now this isn't going to be a true ombre in terms of that it's going to be a really nice blend between the 3 colours. It probably would work out better if you had a darker shade of red and then a middle shade of red and then a lighter shade of red. But I really wanted to get the most out of my alcohol ink, so I wanted to see if I could do it by just adding the alcohol ink blending solution. And the alcohol ink blending solution works kind of like water for watercolour. So as you can see, it makes it lighter and it also blends alcohol ink together, which is really nice. So I wanted a bit more of a sort of fragmented, harsh line sort of look to this piece. But if you wanted a smoother look, you could blow through a straw instead of using one of these spritzing tools. So as you can see, I have got sort of an ombre look here. It's lighter at the top and darker at the bottom, and then a middle shade in the middle. I wanted it to be even lighter at the top, so I'm going in and just adding the alcohol ink blending solution directly to that Yupo piece. And as you can see here, I do think I've got a quite good sort of mix between the 3 colours, but I wanted the middle shade to be just that tiny bit darker, so I'm just adding a bit more of that alcohol ink solution on top. I added a bit more of the alcohol ink directly from the bottle there just to make it a bit darker. Managed to splot a bit over the top piece there, so I just added a bit more of the alcohol ink solution over the top, and that blended it out. And now I'm just flicking the alcohol ink blending solution over the panel just to give a bit more interest and see if it will blend the 3 sort of shades a bit better together. Now as alcohol ink dries, it sometimes does smooth out, and I didn't really want that to be smooth. So I wanted the look as it was, so I'm just using a fan here just to kind of cool that down, and hopefully that will sort of set it as it dries. Next I'm going to do the same thing, but this time I'm using the Indigo alcohol ink. And this again is very saturated colour, as you can see. I'm not adding much to the bottom and it's giving a really dark look. So I'm going in with that spritzing tool and just moving that colour around. And that dries it as you're using the spritzing tool as well. So I've added some of that indigo into the pot there, and I've added quite a lot of the alcohol ink blending solution this time because this colour is so dark. So I'm just adding that colour into the middle, and it did end up being a bit lighter than I expected it to be, but that's okay because I can use that to blend the darker colour with that sort of medium colour as well. And then I'm going to add in quite a bit more of that alcohol ink blending solution to try and make it as light as possible for the top. As it turned out, it didn't really make it that much lighter, but that's okay because I can just add the alcohol ink blending solution directly from the bottle onto the Yupo paper there, and it's going to lighten it up quite a bit. So I'm just pushing that colour around adding a bit more of the alcohol ink blending solution, and as you can see that did wipe away quite a bit of the alcohol ink, so I'm just going back in and sort of adding a little bit more in. The thing with alcohol inks, they're so unpredictable, you never know what they're going to do. You could do something one day and it'd be amazing, and then you could try it again and it doesn't work out at all how you pictured it was going to work out to, or how it worked out in the past either. So I quite like that, how it's turned out so far. So I'm just going to go in and splatter on some of the alcohol ink blending solution with a paintbrush. And I use this paintbrush just for alcohol ink. Next, I'm going to work on the die cut that's going to go on top of the alcohol ink backgrounds. And this is the poppy frame from Simon Says Stamp. And this is part of their new Blossoms and Butterflies collection, which is out today. It's a really beautiful die, but it is very intricate. So I'm going to add some stick it onto the back of my white cardstock before I die cut it. I love this adhesive. It's so thin, but it is still quite strong as well, which is really nice. And it die cuts beautifully because it's so thin. So I'm just adding that there onto the back of my cardstock piece. For some reason I can't seem to get it on properly, but usually it works out quite well. So I'm just adding that onto the back and then cutting that out. And then I'm going to cut out that frame 6 times, and I'm going to layer 3 on top of each other. So I have my first piece here, and I've kept the sort of middle portion inside so that it keeps the frame how it's sort of intended to be, because these are quite fiddly. Those flowers and those stems are going to move around quite a bit as I'm sticking them down, so I really wanted that inside piece to stay inside while I stick them together. So I'm just removing that piece of the stick it release paper from the back and then sticking that down onto the first die cut. And like I said, I'm going to do 3 layers each for each of the frames. So once I've got the outside frame sort of stuck down, I'm then going to use my tweezers just to manipulate those stems of the flowers to get it in the place that I want it to. And the great thing is, stick it doesn't adhere completely until you've really pushed it down, so you've got quite a bit of wiggle room. Next, I'm going to work on the sentiments, and I'm using this stamp set here from Simon Says Stamp, and this is the tiny word set. And I'm going to stamp out the thinking of you and the thank you sentiments. I really love this set. It's really tiny little sentiments, but I really do like them a lot. So I have a piece of black cardstock here in my mini Misty, and I've prepped that with an anti-static powder tool. And I'm going to stamp the sentiments down with Versamark ink. I'm just pressing really lightly there in my mini Misty, just because they're such tiny sentiments. If you push down too hard, it can distort the stamp. And then I'm going to add on some Ranger Superfine White embossing powder. I really like to use a really superfine embossing powder for these sentiments because they're so small. And I can just funnel that back into the jar, and I still get some on my craft desk no matter what I do. And then I'm going to heat set those until they're completely melted. And then once they're melted, I'm going to cut those out into strips using the Simon Says Stamp Sentiment Labels dies. So I'm just using some low tack tape just to adhere that onto the cardstock, and then I can run that through my die cutting machine. And then once they're cut down, I'm just going to use my mini guillotine here just to cut down the sides of them, just to make them a bit smaller. I really love this mini guillotine for little sentiment strips. So here I have my alcohol ink backgrounds. I've cut them down to size so that they fit on these die cut poppy frames. So I'm just removing the backing off of that stick it, off the bottom one, and I can adhere that down onto my alcohol ink background. And like I said, the stick it doesn't adhere completely until you really press it down. So I've got time to make sure that it's in the exact spot that I want it to be. Once I'm happy, I can just press down those flowers and stems. And then as long as I'm completely happy, I'm going to grab my bone folder here and just push down really well onto that frame, and then also the flowers there. Once that's stuck down, I'm going to add this onto my A2 sized white card base. So this is a finished card size of 5.5 by 4.25 inches. And I'm just using some tape runner there just to stick that down onto the front of my card base. And before I stick it down completely, I'm just going to grab my T-square ruler here just to make sure that that's straight. And then I've just added a piece of printer paper over the top just to make sure that I'm not sort of getting my fingers in that alcohol ink, just in case it's not completely dry. So pushing that down, and then I'm going to add my sentiment on top. I've added some foam tape onto the back of that, and then I've just added a bit more tape runner onto the edge that it hangs over the frame. So I can just grab my tweezers here and a T-square ruler, again just to make sure that that sentiment's going on straight. And I find that tweezers help really well with the placement of little things like this. And I can just do the same thing for the red card as well. I really like the contrast of just the one colour with the white and the black. So that's my cards finished for today. I hope you've enjoyed watching. Links to the products will be in the description bar on YouTube and also over on my blog. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon.